Hi, beautiful souls. Today we're going to be talking about reflexivity, what it is, why it's so important, and how do you actually practice it every day. And before we dive into the background on what reflexivity is, I first want to start by sharing an example all the way back from my Little League days. And when I first started playing baseball, I could not for the life of me hit an inside center pitch. And there was one particular coach for another team who realized that I could not hit an inside center pitch. So every single game that we played this coach and this team, he would have his pitcher pitch me inside centers and struck me out every single time. And it's not that I was a bad hitter. I had a really great batting average and I was an overall pretty decent player. But for whatever reason, I could not hit this pitch. And something happened in my life, obviously, that changed that when this coach ended up picking me up for an all-star team. And so I got picked up for his all-star team. And as part of that, he said, you have a really key weakness that you have to fix if you want to be a good player on our team. And he said, I've always been able to strike you out because I know that you cannot hit an inside center pitch. And he said, we need to fix that because if any other coach figures that out, you're going to be a weak player for us. And so every single day, he would make me go to batting practice with the batting coach, and they would pitch me nothing but inside center pitches. And eventually, we learned through that process that I would just take a normal step forward instead of adjusting my step based on the pitch that was coming towards me. And so I thought every time I was going to get the ball that I wanted, and I would step into it just like I was stepping into the perfect pitch. But the reality is the pitches are not always perfect, and you have to be able to reflectively or reflexively adjust in the moment. And so basically what we had to do was we had to reteach my brain and my body that I have to watch the ball as it's coming in, and if it's coming in closer, I have to step out. If it's coming in farther away, then I have to step towards it. And so by simply adjusting the direction of my step, I was able to master hitting an inside center. And to this day, no one will pitch me an inside center because I became so good at it that it happened to be the pitch that I favored. And so when we talk about reflexivity, this is exactly what we mean by reflexivity. Reflexivity is a simple cycle of awareness, evaluation, and adjustment. And so you become aware. For me, I became aware that I could not hit an inside center pitch. I had an outside evaluator, a coach, tell me that I could not do that and that I needed to train my body and my brain to adjust in the moment. And then I had to actively take action every day, so practicing every single day how I was going to adjust for the pitch that I needed to adjust to. And that cycle of awareness, evaluation, and action is exactly what we're talking about when we talk about reflexivity. And reflexivity is different than reflectivity. And so simply reflecting on something and becoming self-aware or aware that something exists is not enough, right? If I had just taken what that coach said, that I couldn't hit an inside center pitch, and I said, oh, I just can't hit an inside center. And I was like, oh, that's who I am. That's how I am. And I never took action to adjust that, then I would not have become a better player. And the same is true for leadership and everything that the complexities of the workplace throws at us. The leader has to be able to adjust. They have to adapt in the moment based on the circumstances of what's happening, the context of the situation, and they have to be able to evaluate themselves in that process. Specifically, how am I communicating? How are my biases impacting my interactions with others? How are my decisions affecting the people that I work with? And if they're not actively taking action on those areas, then they will never grow and they will never be able to influence their team in the ways that they need. And so when we talk about reflexivity, we're talking about it in both a being and a doing state. And if you've ever heard anyone talk about mindfulness and meditation, there's a lot of talk around being and doing, right? So being is you're present, you're in the moment, you're able to slow down and understand yourself, the context of the situation, and you're able to see everything as it is. And then doing is you're actually doing things. You're taking action. You're creating change. You're doing whatever it is that you need to do in the world. And you are integrating knowledge, you're integrating practices, and you're doing that in a way that is contextual to the dynamic or the situation that you're in. Right? And now what's key here is, just like you cannot practice reflexivity without the action phase, you have to be able to do both. You have to be able to reflect and adjust, and you have to be and you have to do. So you have to find a balance between being present and actively adjusting. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about being and doing. So when we're talking about being for a leader, we're thinking about what are the areas that I need to be more competent in? What are the biases that I need to mitigate as part of my own contextual dynamics of entering into these conversations? How do I need to adjust my own actions and my own behaviors? And how do my own opinions impact the decisions that I make, and those kinds of things? And the doing here is you're getting that evaluative feedback from other people. So someone tells you that you've been disrespectful to them, or someone tells you about an experience where you left them out of the conversation, or you made a decision that negatively or adversely impacted a specific group. And so you've got the information from the individuals, and now you have to act on that information. So what are you going to do to mitigate your biases? What are you going to do to change the way that you behave to make sure that you are acting with integrity and with congruence? And how are you going to do that in a way that is going to benefit others? And I guess the last thing that we'll talk about here is, how do you actually practice reflexivity? And this is really, really key. It's very simple and very easy to do, but most people don't know how to do this in practice. And so the first thing that you have to do is you have to have some sort of mechanism to regularly reflect on whatever it is that you need to reflect on. Whether it's your biases, whether it's your actions, your behaviors, your decisions, whatever it is that you need to reflect on, you actually have to establish time in your schedule to reflect on what has happened, how did it happen, and what do I need to learn from that. And so this could look like journaling. It could look like some sort of mindfulness practice. It could look like a meditative practice. It could look like getting structured feedback from your peers and from your colleagues. It could look like all different kinds of things. The second thing that you have to do is you have to have a feedback loop, right? You have to have people in your life tell you where you need to adjust. And so for me, it was the coach who said, I need you to fix this, otherwise you're going to be a weak player on our team, right? And so this could be, a colleague that you have. It could be a mentor that you have, maybe a coach that you're already working with, someone who can give you an outside perspective to show you or to reflect to you where you're not as strong as you could be. The third thing that you have to do is you have to actually commit to taking action. Right? The last part of the reflexivity cycle is to actually act on it, because knowledge is useless unless we know how to competently apply it in practice, right? And so this can look like all different kinds of things. It can look like setting specific goals, making sure that they're measurable and attainable, making sure that you're giving yourself timelines to work in, and those kinds of things. And so let's say, as an example, you decide that you want to work on your unconscious bias. And so reflect on what are your unconscious bias. Have other people in your life tell you of experiences that they've had or times that they felt like you were unconsciously perpetuating an unhealthy behavior. And then once you know what that behavior or that bias is, you have to actually say, I am going to address this bias by doing this specific behavior, this amount of time, and over this time period with these individuals. I'm going to then solicit feedback from individuals to make sure that I am acting in accordance with the way that I want. So the last thing is to actually track and measure your progress. And so if you have some sort of practice where you're going through that cycle, and let's continue with the mitigating bias example. Right? If I am continuously trying to adjust my behaviors and people are still telling me, nope, you're still being ignorant about this, then I have to continuously adjust my behaviors until I can find a behavior or a practice that allows me to meet the needs of the people on my team. And so for this, my coaching example before, I every single day I had to go to batting practice, and every single day my coach would make me practice the steps, practice hitting the balls, and then going back, looking at the footage, making sure I understood that I was stepping this way instead of that way, and going through that entire process, right? So you're consistently evaluating and adjusting, and you can't do that if you don't have a mechanism in place to track and monitor that. And so regular reviews on whatever it is that you're actively working on, what adjustments you've made, and any other fine tuning that you're trying to do. So in a nutshell, we talked about reflexivity today. I hope that this has been helpful for you. It's one of the foundational elements of bringing consciousness into your leadership practice, and you cannot practice leadership without understanding this as a foundational practice, because it is going to be the core of everything that you do as a leader. Because everything that you do as a leader, you're going to have to consistently reflect on, evaluate yourself, and adjust. And so this cycle is very, very important. It's important for everyone, but especially for individuals who want to make meaningful change in other people's lives, who want to actively change their behaviors or how they're being in the world. And so, yes. My name is Coach Aang, if you don't know, and today we talked about reflexivity. If you're interested in some more of our content, you're welcome to find it below, or you on YouTube at Coach Aang, or on Instagram at increasing_consciousness. Thank you so much.